Pachyderm Labs, from Pachyderm Consulting.
Hi everybody, this is Darren from Pachyderm Labs North, and I'm here with another product review. This time it is of the 2013 Google Nexus 7 7-inch tablet, and it's a pretty slick little device. I'm going to tell you about it. So this is the second generation Nexus tablet. The first one was a big hit, and less than a year later they've come out with another one. It's got a new screen, and it's a bit of a different shape. This one, you might notice, is it's really thin as far as if you hold it up in portrait mode, and also very long, and I'll tell you why. It's 1920 by 1200 pixels. That's 1920 by 1200, which is a perfect ratio for 1080p or 720p or your basic HD videos. So if you want to watch TV, you just pop it like that, and you don't get any letterboxing, which you'll get on most of the other tablets, which have more of a square shape to them. So other things that are new, it's got a quad-core processor, and it's got a separate graphics processor and about 2 gigabytes of system memory, so it's blistering fast. It's got a nice rear camera, a nice front camera. Unfortunately, there is not an LED flash, so no flashing. Hit or miss there. The back is a nice, it's plastic, it's fairly hard, but it's also got a nice rubberized coating. It doesn't pick up fingerprints too well, which is nice, and it's so light and has such a good grippy feel to it that it's just really easy and actually kind of fun to carry around. It's extremely light. It's 10.23 ounces, which is actually lighter than the new iPad mini, who they always talk about how they're the lightest. Well, this is even lighter. In fact, for me, it feels almost as light as my regular size cell phone. So it just feels extremely easy to flip around in your hands, to move this way, and just extra portable. I've actually gotten it to fit into a pocket from time to time if I need to use my hands for something else. What else? It runs the latest Android, like all Nexus devices, almost all. Whenever Google puts out a new operating system, the Nexus devices get it. You don't have to go through third parties, you don't have to go through a manufacturer, you don't have to go through a cell phone company, you just get the straight, uncut, beautiful Google Android system. So right now, the current model is Android 4.4, but whenever they come out with 4.5 or whatever else is next, you'll get it right away. You're always the first. It comes in 16 or 32 gigabyte models. They used to have an 8 gigabyte model, but they just got rid of that. So now it's just 16 or 32. You can get it with a Wi-Fi only, like most tablets. You can also buy a model of the 32 gigabyte mode that has the unlocked cell capabilities of multiple platforms. I think you can actually, when you go on the site to purchase one, you can choose which kind of cell data antenna you want on it that'll fit with your data plan. So it's actually pretty wide open. You're not tied to a particular vendor. That's cool. And at launch it was $230. It still is, but you can find it on sale pretty often at places like Staples or any other local retailer. So it's not very expensive. The things I like about it is that it is sci-fi fast. I think back to when I was a kid watching Star Trek Next Generation, and they all had these little tablets walking around, and it was super fast, and it did everything they wanted, and it comes up immediately. Same with current sci-fi shows and movies. Well, this is how it feels when you're using this tablet. You can just it's super fast. You can see here's Google Maps, and it's extremely fast. There's hardly any loading time. It's just almost instant. Get what you want, zip around. It's great. It has a fantastic screen, in my opinion. It's pretty much the same pixel density as the new iPad mini Retina. It doesn't come out as the same resolution just because of the different shapes of the screens. The iPad is a wider screen, fatter screen I should say, not a wider screen, a fatter screen. But the pixel density is about the same, so it's a fantastic screen. Everything is crisp and clear. If you're reading, you don't see any jagged edges around lettering. It all just looks like you're looking at paper, which is great. It's got great sound. It's got a stereo, 2 speakers. They're really close to each other, but on a tablet, what are you going to do? And it actually is pretty loud, so you can pop on Hulu or listen to Pandora or Slacker, whatever it is, and this will be plenty loud on its own. You don't even need headphones to enjoy stereo. So back to the screen size. This is kind of a personal preference thing. I know some people like the iPad for the width of the screen when reading, but for me, I find that this thin, stretched out form factor is really handy for one-handed use. You just hold it in one hand like a cell phone, and you can do whatever you want. You can type, you can scroll. It's really simple. And I've heard people saying with the new Mini, the iPad Mini, that it's just a little bit too long. It's not quite as comfortable, and because it's a little heavier and it's not quite as sticky on the grip, it's a little harder to use it like this, which I really love. Then, of course, when you're watching media or looking at a website, so I've got Hulu on here. It's always going to come in no letterboxing, because it's essentially the same dimensions as an HD screen. And then the added bezel here, you see it's actually thinner here and wider here. It comes in really handy if you're going to hold it. You don't have to worry about where your thumbs are if you just hold it like this. And also for gaming, it's actually kind of nice to have a little bit of a place there to get a better grip on it. And then back to this mode. So that's what I really like. The controls, the power is here, and there's a volume rocker there. All pretty handy, again, for that one-handed holding. What else? It's inexpensive, like I mentioned, and there's no third-party gunk on it because it is pure Android. The things I don't like, there's no media slot. There's no extra place to stick a memory slot. So, even though memory is cheap, you get a little micro SD slot, stick in 128 gigabytes, and you have a big fat hard drive on your tablet. Unfortunately, the Nexus still does not have that. So you're limited to what you've got on here. The 16, I've got the 16, or you can do the 32. I use the cloud for a lot of file storage, but for downloading a movie or something, you're limited. Not too bad, but not great. Another thing is the screen is sometimes a little too touchy. In the cases where you need to tap and hold, or you want to tap, hold, and to move an icon, just minute movements when you're trying to hold, just that your finger moves a little bit and it thinks that you're scrolling. So it doesn't scroll the screen, but it doesn't let you tap and hold and move stuff. It just thinks that you're moving it a little bit. So that's a little irritating, but you get used to it pretty quick. So the obvious argument is Nexus 7 versus iPad Mini Retina. That's their new model. To compare the two, I don't have the other one, but I've read a lot about it. I played with one at the store, and I've looked at a lot of benchmarking videos. I feel pretty safe, in my opinion, that they're almost a wash, depending on your personal preference. The iPad will win a performance fight. Even though the iPad is only a dual core, it's a much beefier dual core and has a bit more graphics processing. So it wins most benchmarking tests. It wins some browser loading, but just minuscule, half seconds and that kind of stuff when you're loading a page. But it would win. So if you're into the performance, especially if you're into 3D gaming on your tablet, definitely the iPad will win that battle. The size comes down to your preference. I prefer this form factor, but I know my coworker Patrick doesn't like it. He would like the wider iPad. So that just comes down to what you like, and the preference of your operating system. I'm not a huge fan of the iOS operating system. I really like Android and its flexibility and the ability for me to customize it to make it look almost exactly how I want, load different front ends on it, just do anything I want. So I like that. Some people want to keep things simple, or they don't want to tinker with their tablets, then iOS is just fine. So that's another personal preference. There's the money factor. The Nexus is cheaper in the 16 gigabyte range by $170, so that's not nothing. And then it even gets worse in the 32 gigabyte range. The 32 gigabyte version of the Nexus is only slightly more expensive, where it's a $100 jump in the iPad. So it's a $230 difference in the 32 gigabyte iPad Mini versus the Nexus 7 32 gigabyte. So that's also not anything to sneeze at, especially when the performance is pretty close. But then again, there is the ecosystem. When it comes to apps, the best apps are on both platforms, in my opinion. there's some games that don't translate well between each other, but most of the stuff that I think our clients use, and especially the stuff I use, you can find it on either one. So that's kind of a wash. But if you've spent already money in iTunes for your videos and for your music and for your apps, this doesn't make a lot of sense to switch to an Android where you can't move those apps and stuff over. You could say the same if you invested a lot in Google Play Store, but it's not quite the same, not quite as well used. Anyway, so if you have an investment in the iTunes ecosystem, you should stick with an iPad. If you don't, then this is a great device. If it's your first tablet, very great. And if you decide you don't like it, or you always wanted something a little more, or the next So the next iPad comes out, and you have iPad envy. You're not going to feel quite so bad when you've only spent $230 or less on something like this. This is really easy. If you've spent $400 on an iPad, it's going to sting a little more. So, which one should you get? Well, again, it really comes down to preference and money. You want to spend more. If you're already invested in one, go with the iPad. If you're not invested in one, you want to spend less, and you want to get about the same performance, go with the Nexus 7. That's my recommendation. I love it, and stay tuned for whatever comes next.